The fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California, home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Evanston, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@kbla1580.com. That's advertising@kbla1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you Black.
Dollar, several trillion. I'll start with one. It is time for Freedmen Friday, our reparations conversation. It's meant to be a comprehensive one to keep us up to date, to be part of the momentum, keeping that momentum going each and every week. And it is my honor to welcome into the space a reparatory justice scholar and an attorney with a specialization in entertainment and intellectual property law. She has been making a difference since she was a law student when she contributed to human rights reports related to domestic and international human rights issues, racial inequality in Brazil, human right to sanitation in Lowndes County, Alabama, and the human right to remedy for indigenous Black women affected by gender violence in New Guinea. I mean, she has become a leading voice in the reparations movement. As the chair of the task force, the California Task Force. She got her JD from Columbia Law in New York City and a Master of Laws degree in International Criminal Law from the University of Amsterdam, bachelor's from UCLA. Attorney Kamilah Moore, welcome.
Hello, good morning. So nice to be here with you again, Dominique.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It is always good to talk with you. And there's a lot of things moving right now, good and less encouraging. So let's start with the good, or what sounded like good from far away. I guess I didn't. You probably have more details about it than I do. What did you feel about that $12 million in the budget for those reparations bills? The California.
Yeah, budget. I think. Yes. Yeah, so. The legislature and the governor recently announced that in the next year's budget, 2024-2025, $12 million has been allocated for what it's called reparations implementation funding. So essentially, any reparations bills that passes the state legislature by the August 30th deadline and then is signed by Governor Newsom by September 30th, any of those bills, if they require funding, that $12 million will be allocated to implement those bills. So I think it's a step in the right direction. We definitely need funding to implement, right, to create the infrastructure for what I argue will be more substantive and direct policies and legislation, hopefully in the near future. We have the next legislative session to introduce even more bills. But, I understand there's some activists who say it's not enough, and I tend to agree with them. But at the same time, I think it's a great step in the right direction. For one, because the state is acknowledging the harm, acknowledging the atrocities that they've committed against this particular group of people, and they're putting at least some money behind it. So that's a huge step that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, to me it feels really important, also symbolically, just that the fact that we're in a really tough budget cycle. And they felt compelled by the pressure of folks like yourself and the KBLA delegation to put some money on it at a time when everyone's saying we have to cut.
Yes, that's a great observation as well. To be honest, when we started the task force, we, had a historic windfall in terms of the surplus the state had. And then by the time the task force ended, we were being bombarded with, stories around the state having this historic budget deficit. And so, towards the end of the task force, we were really concerned and worried about, what reparations would look like, if it would even, exist in the state due to, those stories. And so it's I think, a great positive direction that we're in, that we're having, $12 million allocated in, this historic budget deficit that we're in currently.
Yeah, because, budgets come and go, right? Deficits come and go, and will be flush again, another time, and whether we are or not, it's a debt that's owed. So yeah, I thought I actually was pretty surprised to see that. Talk to me about this. What we're this ballot measure that's going to be coming up in November, which is going to end mandatory work requirements. Basically enslavement in prison, and it's being called a reparations bill. Which makes we already saw this fail when Cindy Comlager brought it forth last year, I think it was, or the year before. So how do you see this particular bill?
Yes, so ACA 8, that is the bill that in its current form would essentially help to end slavery or involuntary servitude in prisons by amending the California Constitution, because currently the California Constitution allows for slavery and voluntary servitude if you're in prison, similar to the federal Constitution. So you have various different states who have already done the work to amend their Constitution. Like you said, Congresswoman Cindy Comlager, she tried to introduce similar legislation called ACA 3, I think, like you said, I think in 2022, but it failed. It wasn't able to be passed on the Senate floor. And so now the chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, Lori Wilson, she has taken the mantle as Assembly member to reintroduce, a form of ACA 3. I can't remember the full details, but it's not as strong as ACA 3, but it still is a constitutional amendment. And so because ACA 8 passed on the state assembly and Senate floors, it now has an opportunity to go to the voters on the November ballot. So it's great news, because ACA 3 didn't get that chance because it didn't pass the Senate floor. But ACA 8, it passed through the legislature, and now voters will have to decide, whether they want to amend the California Constitution to no longer allow slavery or involuntary servitude in prison.
That's going to be Proposition 6. To me, it seems like a yes on 6, starting to get you, a little bit at a time, get your mind around some of these things. And I'm guessing that if it's weakened, I haven't looked at, the text of it, but I'm guessing because the argument was, well, we can't afford to pay minimum wage to prisoners. Well, if they're workers, they have to be paid minimum wage. I think that was, maybe that's what they stripped out of it, is just making it where they can't force you to work. They can still, if you agree to it, you can still work for, pennies, which is but that could be another battle for another day.
Right. And we did contain in our final report, we had over, 115 policy recommendations. And one of those recommendations were to amend the California Constitution to no longer allow slavery in prisons. We do see that as a form of, repair. So essentially, yes. So I'm personally glad that there's progress in this, and that the voters will have a chance to decide. And I'm sure, I think most California voters will agree that we should not have slavery in prisons.
Yeah, hopefully. The only way usually stuff like that doesn't pass is when people start getting confused, and folks label things the opposite of what they actually are, which does happen. So that's why I want to flag it early. We're going to keep talking about it. That's Proposition 6. Attorney Kamilah Moore, do you celebrate the 4th of July?
It's a day off, time to barbecue, hang out. So.
I celebrate a day off for sure, yeah.
Yes, definitely. But Juneteenth is definitely something I'm seeing more Black Americans are starting to celebrate and kind of privilege over July 4th, which for good reason, I think.
Yeah, we have definitely. But the reason I asked that is because a lot of people inside the reparations movement, especially lineage-oriented folks, are really strong on the red, white, and blue and reclaiming or claiming our stake in America. For me, I call myself a progressive patriot. I don't want to concede America and patriotism to people that are anti-Black, white supremacists, or whatever. So I guess it was kind of in that context, just like you see some controversy about which flag is the right Juneteenth flag. Some people want to do red, black, and green. Some people, there's that official red, white, and blue one. And then some people do, I saw, some people upset because our social media folks on KBLA posted something sort of with Caribbean-ish colors, and they were saying, hey, where's our reparations flag? So it's kind of in that context, I guess, that I was asking that question.
No, I totally see your viewpoint. I tend to agree, in terms of the contributions that descendants of American slaves have given to this country. The people who, just to be frank, the people who claim that they're patriots, right, who are white supremacists, Republicans, they're really traitors. They're in terms of the ideology that they push, right? We tend to be, pushing Confederate talk points. The Confederates were traitors, right? They were traitors to the ideals and the values that the United States claim to at least represent, in the Declaration of Independence, and in the Constitution, right? People don't realize that the Confederates in their Constitution, if you read, Confederate President Alexander Stephens' cornerstone speech, he talked about what the Confederacy, what they were fighting for. They were fighting for the United States to be founded on this principle of enslavement of Black people in particular. And they wanted to spread this ideology throughout the New World, across the Americas. They wanted the entire Americas to be known as a society built on Black enslavement and subjugation, right? And so it's just the irony that the people who claim to be patriots today, they're really traitors to the fundamental values of what this society pretends to be about. And so, to that vein, I think it's very actually revolutionary to me to kind of subvert that for Black Americans to claim patriotism in the vein in which it should exist. Like Frederick Douglass, he created a speech, what to the slaves is, 4th of July, trying to subvert this narrative essentially as well. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely celebrate 4th of July in that vein. And Juneteenth colors, I understand people's viewpoints, but I like the red, white, and blue because it has a particular meaning from Ben Graff. So, I try to kind of stay out of that, but at the same time, I definitely agree with what he's saying.
Yeah, I was just include some history in that, whatever your colors are. Just make sure there's some history in that. I remember Jesse Jackson many years ago talking about Black History Month without the history, becoming a series of just posters. And I think that probably the priority is that, making sure we keep the history in Juneteenth. What are we celebrating again? We're talking with Attorney Kamilah Moore. A lot to unpack. When we come forward, I would love to get your thoughts on the newest action by the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre. That and more on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Happy anniversary, KBLA!
KBLA Talk Talk 1580 is now celebrating 3 years of amplifying our voice and uplifting our community. We deeply appreciate your support of this radio station and will always do our level best to earn your support. Here's to many more years of loving and serving our community. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
When you turn to the Employment Development Department, we'll help you get there. Whether it's support for you and your family while you find a new job, or the resources to focus on your recovery after illness or injury, we can help you move forward. From support while you bond with your newborn, to helping serve your family while your partner serves our country. Your EDD. We'll help you get there. For more information, visit edd.ca.gov.
The Supplemental Security Income Program provides monthly payments to help meet basic needs, like putting food on the table, paying the rent, or buying new shoes for growing feet. You may qualify if your income and financial resources are low, and you are 65 or older, or an adult or child with a disability, or who is blind. Call 1-800-772-1213 or go to ssa.gov/SSI to start to apply. Produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Summer's greatest hits are going on now, and Macy's July 4th sale has summer's greatest savings, like 20 to 60% off warm weather styles to refresh your look. Shop amazing limited time specials like swim and cover-ups for your next beach day, 50% off. And sandals from On 34th, Tommy Hilfiger, and more, 30 to 40% off. Going on now at Macy's. Macy's Star Rewards members earn on every purchase, except gift cards, services, and fees. Savings off already reduced prices, exclusions apply.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZzzQuil.
ZzzQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZzzQuil nights. Explore our products at ZzzQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Go to hims.com/joy. Through HIMS, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, and the process is 100% online. To start your free online visit, go to hims.com/joy. That's HIMS.com/JOY.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Right now, we are talking with the woman who is the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, an accomplished attorney Kamilah Moore. And I was, of course, like most of us, dismayed to see that the survivors of that Tulsa Race Massacre got bad news from the Supreme Court in their state, saying that they didn't have standing, or that I guess they said that they were saying that the nuisance statute that they were trying to use after having tried many other angles to try to get restitution, really, for that was not valid. Now they're saying that they want Biden, the Department of Justice, to step in and look at this under a special statute that allows the investigation of cold cases of anti-Black violence and murder. What do you think of all of that?
Yeah, I think that, I was really saddened to hear the news. I've been watching the case very closely. And, I know in terms of the argument, like the legal argument that they utilized, like you said, it was public nuisance. And honestly, they modeled that argument off of another case where another class action case in the area where Johnson & Johnson was being sued for public nuisance for creating the opioid crisis. And so they actually, in terms of just I wouldn't say a critique, but just in terms of an observation, they modeled their public nuisance argument off of the Johnson & Johnson argument actually before that case was resolved. So, they kind of just had a hunch or feeling that, the class action suit would prevail over Johnson & Johnson, but it actually didn't. Johnson & Johnson of the people suing Johnson & Johnson failed for similar reasoning that the Tulsa litigants failed in the eyes of the court. And so, that's just kind of one kind of critique or observation that I've seen. But essentially, when I read the opinion, the court is essentially saying that the legislature has to act. The court cannot, make an opinion that would create legislation. In essence, that's essentially in their eyes what the Tulsa litigants were asking the court to do. And the court also explained why this doesn't fit within a public nuisance. But, essentially, I want to tie that back to what we're doing in California. Across the history of strategic litigation around reparations, the courts are saying the same thing. The courts are saying the legislature has to act. The legislature has to act. And that's what we're doing in California. We're learning from those lessons, and we are, creating legislation to create the task force, thanks to, Secretary Shirley Weber when she was in the state assembly. And now you have the California Legislative Black Caucus, including State Senator Stephen Bradford, introducing, reparations legislation. I think in terms of strategy, that is the best idea or strategy right now is to it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Because of who are these elected officials on the federal level or wherever in these conservative states. But I think that's our best bet right now is to push for legislation in particular. I have one more point about Biden. If you notice, there's a trend. Black folks, we have serious issues that does require either congressional action or executive action. You have, and rightfully so, Demario Solomon Simmons, the lawyer who represents the Tulsa survivors, essentially, like you said, demanding Biden open the Emmett Till Cold Case Act. You have Arian Simone, who is the head of the Fearless Fund. Right, she just got a bad decision from the courts, essentially saying that providing funds to Black women and venture capital, organizations like herself violates the 14th Amendment. And so she's calling for Biden via executive action to, protect DEI. You have reparations activists who are also calling on Biden due to congressional failure to create a reparations commission of some sort. And so I just wanted to say that's also an observation. Like, we have serious issues that need to be addressed, and we're being failed collectively, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page with that, Attorney Kamilah Moore, because I keep saying on the show, Biden's candidacy is floundering and supposedly Black people are going the other way. Well, why don't you go ahead and by executive order do H.R. 40 or something similar? Why don't you go ahead and I think the Black Wall Street is a good example. I didn't realize that the Fearless Fund had also called on him for action. But if you want the Black vote, we appreciate Ketanji Brown Jackson. I appreciate, I'll speak for myself, the vice president, but that's not enough. And if you're really serious about getting our vote, let's take some radical action. Show them that you're serious.
Right.
How would that work? I mean, I guess for DEI is what I'm thinking about, because right now the message I got from Fearless Fund is not only we don't want to include you, we don't want diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not only do we want to discriminate against you and get rid of any remedies, i.e. affirmative action, we don't want you to be able to help yourselves. And that's like next level for me.
Yeah, it's insane in terms of, these conservative groups, attacking these programs. But at the same time, someone in California, we've had to deal with these conservative groups at least since 1996, right? Because affirmative action, which, bans racial considerations or considerations of race in employment, contracting, and education, has been illegal in this state since 1996 via Proposition 209. And so, We've had to kind of deal with what we're kind of seeing on the federal level for almost 30 years. And so we've had to be creative, at least recently. And so that's also part of the reason why in California, in terms of the community of eligibility, for, more substantive recommendations from the task force, like direct cash payments and some of the other direct benefits that will come out of, the state agency bill that's currently working its way through the legislature. That's part of the benefit as well. Mm-hmm. Lineage is the reason we brought up lineage instead of race, right? Because we consulted with, for instance, UC Berkeley Law School Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, who gave expert testimony to the task force and said, if you all want your reparations recommendations to succeed and to prevail in the courts in the state, also take into account what the Supreme Court most likely will do, because he predicted the outcome of the affirmative action case in 2023 when he came to the task force in 2022. And, he essentially stated, if you want your reparations program in the state of California to prevail, then you need to structure it via a lineage-based standard rather than a race-based standard. So you have to structure it in a way where the benefit is to descendants of slaves, because on its face, that's a racially neutral term, and it is not. And then in effect, it's not subject to heightened scrutiny under judicial review called strict scrutiny. And most policies, when they're reviewed by the courts that have race in them, they're viewed via strict scrutiny, and those policies most likely almost always fail because of this heightened sense of review. And so that's why, for instance, this bill that Senator Bradford's bill that would create a new state agency, 1403, that's based on lineage, right? It's an agency for descendants of American slaves. The bill that he also introduced, SB 1331, that would create a new an account in the state treasury. That's for descendants of American slaves in particular. And so, I just wanted to kind of uplift that and say, for instance, what if Ariane Simone in the Fearless Fund structured her program a bit differently, where it's a lineage-based benefit, not a race-based benefit? Could there be some success there? I mean, we just kind of have to be creative and see.
Yeah, after News, Traffic, and Sports, I want to put that lens that you just shared on what's happening in Evanston and how that affirms, or how it could affirm or undermine that conversation. We're talking with attorney Kamilah Moore. It's a Freedmen Friday on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. An 8-year-old boy and 2 women are dead, and 2 other young boys are seriously wounded following a shooting on Chicago's South Side. Police say multiple shooters opened fire into a home. 3 children, ages 5 to 8, and 2 women suffered gunshot wounds. No arrests have been made. The CDC is confirming a 4th human case of bird flu. It was found in a dairy worker in Colorado who developed eye symptoms and has since recovered. Louisiana is the 28th state to allow concealed carry of a gun without a permit. The law requires people to reveal they're armed if they're interacting with police. And that's the latest. I'm Ree Harris on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers lost 2 out of 3 to Arizona at home. The Dodgers are glad to see Arizona first baseman Christian Walker leave town. Walker hit 5 home runs in the 3-game series, 4 in the last 2 games. The Dodgers are back in action tonight against Milwaukee. First pitch at 7:10. The Angels were swept at Oakland. They were shut out yesterday. The Angels have lost 4 straight. They're in Chicago today to start a 3-game series with the Cubs. The LA Sparks are at home tonight against the Las Vegas Aces, the 2-time defending WNBA champions. The Sparks are trying to snap an 8-game losing streak. The World Boxing Council expelled junior welterweight champion Ryan Garcia until further notice for using the N-word and making derogatory comments about Muslims in a live online video. Garcia will not be allowed to fight or participate in any boxing activities. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So, how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, it's me, Gia Peppers. Tune in to More Than That live on radio this weekend or wherever you get your podcasts. This week, we're celebrating cookout season with barbecue pitmaster Mo Kasan. He'll share the best grilling tips, how to make the most of your leftovers, and the importance of gathering your family and friends over a good meal. This episode of More Than That is brought to you by Kroger, giving families the quality food they crave at prices they deserve. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Barbecue is a global phenomenon. It's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It's about feeding families. Well, I don't care how many trophies you got and how many things you achieved. It all harkens back to folks trying to feed people. You know, my grandma has 17 kids, so we always had a lot of get-togethers and cookouts and stuff, and that's what inspired me, just fueled my passion for grilling. No matter what problems we were having in our family, individually, whatever, it was always squashed and ready to go when we got together. It was just family. And those are positive memories that I have growing up.
Yes. Oh.
So seeing my aunts, my uncles started firing up with charcoal and some wood and putting meat on, seasoning up, just having a good time. Aunts and uncles chopping it up, cousins running around. That helped start the passion of me cooking.
If I'm coming to your house, what's your favorite thing to grill?
Man, I'm gonna make you some beef short ribs.
Ooh.
My collard greens with smoked turkey legs. My jalapeno cheddar cheese cornbread. It's got sweet corn in it.
Jalapeno cheddar cheese.
Oh yeah, it's fire. Oh, my black eyed peas with Jimmy Dean sausage in it. Spicy Jimmy Dean sausage. Oh yeah, it's fire. Yeah, I'll make that for you and it'll be a wrap.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
And we are talking with attorney Kamilah Moore. She's an entertainment and intellectual property expert who chaired the California Reparations Task Force. And trying to, well, let's follow up on the Evanston thing first. I guess my mind is everywhere at once right now. But Evanston, Illinois, which is the first city in the country to actually implement reparations payments, even though it's specifically based around housing, has been sued. And my understanding is that they're being sued because it's a race-based policy, even though my perception is that it's only for people, descendants of enslaved people that have been discriminated against, which seems very specific to me. What am I missing here?
Yeah, so a conservative group called Judicial Watch is suing the city of Evanston, pretty much claiming in their complaint that the Evanston program provides a race-based benefit and, on its face is unconstitutional. When you look at the Evanston program's eligibility requirements, it requires the present-day applicant, so the person applying for the program, to identify as Black, and it clarifies by Black, of all the racial groups coming from Africa. It expressly declares that this program is not only for descendants of American slaves, and then it also requires for the Black applicant to show that they had a Black ancestor living in the city of Evanston during a particular period of time, where the city of Evanston in an official government report has, stated that they participated in, redlining and, racially restricted covenants and essentially housing segregation. And so, the city of Evanston has said, and they're continuing to give out payments to this very day, saying they are, going to voraciously defend their program, essentially saying that even though it's race-based in terms of, the present-day applicant and, the ancestor having to be Black, because they, admitted to segregation in their official report, it would withstand, strict scrutiny. They'll argue that this program was nearly tailored to achieve a compelling government interest, and that it was, at least the least restrictive means to achieve that interest. That's like the test for strict scrutiny. Now, that's going to be the question, is whether those eligibility criteria that I mentioned is narrowly tailored enough to achieve, compelling government interest, which presumably would be, rectifying its history of housing segregation. The California, just to give a parallel, the California Reparations Task Force, it differs from the Evanston model because technically it doesn't require the present-day applicant to identify as Black. It just requires you to be a descendant of American slaves. So, for instance, there's Black Americans who are multiracial, right? They're descendants of American slaves, either from their mom's side or their father's side, but they may not identify just as Black, right? And so I'm just kind of like giving you...
I mean, they're delusional. My mom is white, but, okay, are you living in America? But anyway,
right.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is that formula, as you're describing it, sounds like a combination of lineage and race. And it does seem quite specific. Does it concern you that even in a more strict lineage kind of model, that these conservative groups can attack it as a substitute, for race? That it's really just another way of saying race?
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, they're already, starting to form these arguments, saying that it's, it's a proxy for race. That's something that, task force we talked about as well. But, essentially, we just leaned on, the expertise of some of the legal scholars that I mentioned earlier. And also, taking account to, actual conversations or arguments, rather, that, Supreme Court justices have made, that may not have landed in the opinion, but, if you pay attention, they're talking about in oral arguments. Like for the affirmative action case, you had justices saying, like, pushing back against these conservative lawyers that were trying to, strike down race-conscious affirmative action under a diversity rationale. You had the Supreme Court justices, even conservative ones like Kavanaugh, ironically, pushing back on them by saying that, the term descendants of American slaves is race neutral, or that, actually, in terms of...
Which makes my head explode. Okay, yeah, right, all right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just the last point, Harvard and University of North Carolina, those were the two institutions that were being sued by these conservative groups. And keep in mind, this has been lost in this conversation. These two institutions were defending their affirmative action policies on the basis of diversity, saying that we want to consider race on the basis of achieving educational benefits of diversity. However, the Supreme Court justices stated if in fact these two institutions wanted to have a affirmative action program that was based on rectifying their own history of exclusion and discrimination, particularly against Black Americans, they could use race or derivatives of race to do that. However, University of North Carolina and Harvard expressly disclaimed in that case. They said, we are not basing our affirmative action program on any remedial type of program at all. We're solely basing it on the educational benefits of diversity. So that's also fought on these institutions. People are coming out of this decision saying affirmative action is dead, but in a sense, affirmative action is very much alive if these institutions would go back to the original concept for why this program, affirmative action, became to be. Affirmative action was a program intended specifically for descendants of American slaves, right, for us to catch up in these educational institutions and industries. The Supreme Court said these institutions can very well do that. They can very well have an affirmative action program for descendants of American slaves. These institutions just don't want to take accountability and culpability for their actions.
So it sounds like you're saying if they were to create programs that were based on the specific harm that they have incurred, that they would likely hold up in court based on what the Supreme Court has said, although, as we learned with the Dobbs decision, they're a bunch of liars because they all said it was settled law and then went ahead and did what the heck they wanted to do anyway. But still, it's an interesting point. Should you decide to have true accountability, Harvard, you could actually address specific harms and then possibly create programs that would stand.
Absolutely.
Interesting point. We got a lot to talk about. I know, you actually, I'm looking on your Twitter here. When we come forward, I want to talk about where some of these bills are, the reparations bills in the state of California, the stuff you guys recommended and some you didn't, where they are, and how we can be advocates for them, either through organizations or through contacting our lawmakers. And if we have time, Attorney Kamilah Moore, there's a little conversation I had with some Black folks in Africa that certainly, I think, informs some other work we may have to do. As Black Americans, I'll explain when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Are you concerned about the youth in our community? Family connections are crucial for youth and young adults, especially those in crisis. Sanctuary of Hope is dedicated to improving the lives of these young individuals through bonding, healing, and relationships. Join us on July 11th at 9:30 a.m. at Holman United Methodist Church for breakfast and an inspiring conversation on family connections. You'll meet some of the dedicated Sanctuary of Hope team, community members who have been a part of crisis resolution, and young people whose lives have been transformed by support and care. Learn about the Sanctuary of Hope's programs that assist youth and young adults, and discover how you too can be part of the solution. For more details and to register to attend, visit thesoh.org. That's www.thesoh.org. Join a movement that's making a real difference.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You could earn one for free in as few as 5 months, online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach, plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV. Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Looks like Bobby needs a ride again.
Grab the keys. Let's take our auntie to the swap meet. Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, do it all in a Chevy SUV. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% APR on all 2024 Silverado 1500, Blazer EV, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Colorado models. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 17.0%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 7/31/24.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DiPrima right now.
Right now, we're in the midst of a Freedmen Friday conversation, our comprehensive exploration every single week on Friday, second hour of the show, to make sure we're up to speed and that we are part of the momentum, part of this historical time in which we are seeing progress. Progress I never thought we would get to this quickly. Attorney Kamilah Moore is my guest this morning. She was the chair of the California Reparations Task Force. So, you know, usually we are more effective in organizations than going it alone. What are some of the groups that you would recommend folks get connected with if they want to be in this space and be effective?
Absolutely. So one, definitely CJEC, which stands for Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. They were one of the actual anchor organizations that help support the task force's work through community listening sessions and other initiatives. And they're still doing the work, based in Sacramento. So they're at, each of these hearings of all of these reparations bills. Particularly Senator Bradford's priority bills, the bills that would create a new state agency and a new state fund for descendants of American slaves, and then also SB 1050 that would allow for families to get their land back or compensation if it was taken by the government unjustly via, racially motivated eminent domain, and other bills like ACA 8, right, which recently passed that we just talked about. And so definitely Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, CJEC official on social media and their website. And then for folks based in LA, there's a group, Lineage, Equity, and Advancement Project that, definitely recommend. That's also part of CJEC. They recently, I was invited by them to go all the way to D.C. for a fly-in where we met with federal policymakers, and, with legacy organizations as well, to, share with them the insights from the California Reparations Task Force and the incredible work that these activists are doing, every day on reparations And data disaggregation as well is one of the initiatives that they're pushing, which they actually successfully pushed through the legislature via a bill called SB 189. So currently, all state employees, and I think it's going to expand to everyone in the state of California, it's going to be disaggregated, the African Black racial category, so people will be able to show or choose, whether they're descendants of American slaves, or whether they're from the Caribbean, whether they're from continental Africa, similar to data disaggregation that has already existed for, AAPI population and other populations. And so, yeah, those two groups come to mind, but there's so many various different groups that are out there that are really doing the work every day. So definitely stay engaged and listen to Freedmen Fridays. Is a great source of information as well.
Okay, thank you. So with that, let's talk about where some of these bills are in the Assembly and the Senate, and what we could, be calling about or tracking right now.
Yes, so the bills that I just mentioned, they had a recent hearing in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. And because each of those bills, the bills that were created a new state agency, the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, the new fund, and the eminent domain bill, because they, these bills are attached with, a certain amount of money that would have to go towards implementing it. That process for bills that come with a certain price tag potentially have to go to what's called the suspense file. And that's a separate committee where, committee members, kind of decide what to do with bills that may have a higher price tag. And some people say that's where bills go to die, but that's not always, right? These other bills that passed on the Senate, these same bills that passed on the Senate side, they're now on the Assembly side, they pass the suspense file on the other side. And so what I'm saying is these bills are moving. Keep in mind, the COBC, they introduced 14 bills as part of their reparations priority package, and most of them have passed, at least, the Assembly side and or the Senate side, and then they have to kind of go through the similar process on the opposite side. So all of these bills are moving. I think Bradford's bills in particular, they've seen the most movement. They're just one step away from being on the governor's desk. So if SB 1403, SB 1331, and SB 1050, those three bills that I just mentioned, if they pass the suspense file, and I believe the next hearing is August 15th, if they pass the suspense file, then they'll be voted on the Assembly floor, and then it'll be on Governor Newsom's desk to sign. And so I know that CJEC and other organizations, also CJEC is a part of a coalition called Californians Organizing for Reparations. So if you're an individual, but more importantly an organization that wants to get involved, you can join CORE, Californians Organizing for Reparations, led by CJEC and Bar High, which is a housing desegregation and justice initiative based in the Bay Area. You can join a coalition of organizations doing this work. Going to these legislative hearings, I know people want to turn out at this particular suspense file hearing August 15th. The more people we have, I think, the better, so that these bills pass out of committee, are voted on the Assembly floor, and then are presented to Governor Newsom's desk. These bills in particular, I think, set the infrastructure for more substantive and stronger legislation in future legislative sessions.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of lay the groundwork for even cash reparations. Like, you need these pieces of the puzzle, right, before you can, before we can get to that next step, even with the cash piece, right?
Exactly. We need, in every instance of reparations for other groups, for Holocaust survivors and their heirs, or for Japanese American internment camp survivors, or victims in Guam. Each reparations effort has had some type of institution, some type of infrastructure, essentially, some type of office, right? Essentially the process claim and to do other necessary work. So the infrastructure needs to be set in place first for, like you said, direct cash payments and other direct benefits to come after.
And so maybe also finding out who's on that appropriations committee and making a call or an email might not be a bad idea, saying, hey, we got our eyes on you. Get this out of committee. Yeah, might not be a bad idea. So we had a robust conversation, and this is probably a short take because we're close to the end of the hour, but about race. Interesting. Some folks tell me I'm not black. It was based partly on me being light, but it was also based on their perception that America is this golden, land of opportunity, and that we as black Americans are already leveled up because we're here. Mm-hmm. And that's the part I didn't realize. They think we already have it good, and that, their definition of our blackness is weird to me. I don't know another word to use, but to me, it meant that we got a lot of education to do around, the position of black Americans, descendants of enslaved persons, freedmen in this country, worldwide, not just with white people, but with other people from other nations.
I agree, and that reminds me of a conversation that I had recently with my family member, we were talking about these issues or why there might be a disconnect between, black Americans and, black folks from continental Africa today, or even Caribbeans today. And so, we were essentially saying, and, instead of kind of, instead of having any ill will about it, it really, really shows that there needs to be education. Like a lot of, you would think just because we share the same skin color, they understand what we've been through, and vice versa. But really, what we're talking, we want to center Black Americans in this conversation because, it's important. We need to take on the onus. Essentially, it's going to be hard, but I think we need to start educating, yes, not only white folks, but even people of color and even people who share the same skin color as us about what we've been through in our history. Like there needs to be those shared conversations, obviously, for there to be progress. It sounds corny. It's not, glamorous work, but it needs to happen. I think Pan-Africanists also need to take the charge in leading that as well, right? Political education around, the contributions of Black Americans to this country.
No doubt. And the contributions and what we have also, been through. I think for me, it was really a call to action because the specificity of our ancestors is important, and we're both kind of letting each other be interpreted by a Hollywood lens, which is not a black lens, on who the other is, and that is a problem.
Yeah, I meant to say that as well. A lot of their viewpoint from us is skewed by Hollywood or music, and that's not the full experience of who and what we are.
Yeah. Attorney Kamilah Moore, thank you so much for being with me this morning.
Thank you so much.
And, of course, you can follow her on all the places, including Twitter, which is Kamilah Moore Esquire. Is that what it is? At Kamilah V. Moore. At Kamilah V. Moore. Follow me, DiPrima Radio. Thank you again. We will be going back to Kenya when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 15.